This is the elementary Sunday school lesson for October 20th. Sunday school is at 10 o'clock in the purple classroom. And the story this week, we're going to be using the Shine curriculum, and it's called Jeremiah and a New Covenant. This is on page 142 of the Shine Bible. And you can kind of see there kind of the length of the story, which they can read together or take turns, however works for them. There's a lot of great activities in this story. So this is about Jeremiah being called by God to help create a new covenant and spread the word, etc. And he is a child when he's called. And so the idea is really to talk about what does that mean, being called by God? How do you know if you're called? How might that look to you, right? We aren't expecting to hear God's voice, but what kind of things do we experience in our life that might be something that we should pay more attention to than others? So that's the gist of the story. The lesson here that I'll send you has more information around that. And it's about the covenant that God promised was about leading to forgiveness and a deep love and knowledge of God, etc. So it's all those really positive messages that we like to talk about in the Bible. On page 51 of the lesson comes the wonder and reflect questions that follow after the story. So these are questions such as, I wonder what Jeremiah thought when God touched his mouth. In this story, that's what happened. So that's an interesting visual. I wonder how Jeremiah felt telling the people that they had broken God's covenant. So he was bearing some good and bad news, right? And so that might be interesting for the kids to discuss. If they're not super interested in these questions, that's okay. They can read the story and move on to the activities, because I think the activities are very rich, almost richer than the questions. But I do like to kind of keep a flow going of the same thing so that they are not too fidgety. But under the Peace Notes section, which is right also on page 51, right underneath where the wonder and reflect questions are, it talks about God told Jeremiah, do not say that you are too young. You will go where I send you, and you will speak the languages I give you. Do not be afraid. I will be with you. So part of the power of this story for this age group is that God is talking to a young child, probably an elementary school kid, maybe 10, right? Someone they can relate to. So God calls us, no matter what our age, to spread love and peace. So then they want us to reflect on these questions. What makes it difficult to speak up when people are hurting themselves or others or the earth? Why do we pause? What makes that hard? Is it easier or more difficult if the people are your friends or you know them well? And then what if we are the ones causing harms? What do we do when others correct us in our behavior? So I think those questions are really valuable for kids of this age to contemplate, more so than God touching Jeremiah's mouth. Just my personal opinion. So of the activities that they're going on, there's 3 that I think are really good, and you can choose, actually there's 4, but you can choose whichever one you're in the mood for. So the first one is a game, like a board game. It's called Love in Action, and this is what it looks like. So I will have this and all the pieces. It's a very simple game. It comes with some love in action cards that are on the board. And then I put out a collection of beads, stones really, that serve as playing pieces that each child will move across. I have probably 10 there, just depending on how many kids you have. And so they'll roll a dice. They'll get to move through. And of course, the idea is to get into you start in the middle and then you work your way out of the heart. And if you do something, you land on a spot that says, you spoke rudely to a teacher, not cool, move back 3 spaces, right? Then there's some other ones that are blank, and the instructions for this are on the actual board here. Then when you reach a blank one, you have to pick a love and action card. And it has a statement on it that then the rest of the people have to vote on. It's kind of like apples to apples at this point. Like, it says, read the card aloud together with the group and decide whether the card is describing love in action. So if the group decides yes, then you then the play moves to the next person. If the group says no or they can't agree, they choose another card and you repeat the process until the group is in agreement. So an example of love in action. You held the door for someone who had their arms full of bags. Great, that seems like an easy answer, but you never know. Really, you never know. So that's the game that will be in there. Depending on how into it they are, that could take the whole rest of the time itself. But I also have, there's an idea on page 52 of the lesson plan called under retell. And this is something I would suggest if the kids are really antsy and can't sit still because it's the movement. So they say, take your story from the Shine Bible, read it really slowly. When you get to various points, call out freeze frame, and the children will immediately freeze in whatever state they are in acting out the play or the story, right? And they create a still image of what's happening in that story. And so they have to carefully listen and they have to act out the scene as you read it slowly and then freeze when you say so. So that might be fun, just depending on what the kids are up to. If they're in more of a contemplative mood, I have a couple things they could do. I have copies of this page, probably 10 or so, where it talks about the other people in the Bible who were called by God. So again, this requires them to have the Bible, and there are extra Bibles on the bottom of the white cabinet in there. And they can work in groups, by pairs or small groups to do this. They look up this particular verse and they fill in the blanks. So Moses, from Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. God called me through a blank bush. So they fill out that. And then there's a whole, whatever words or letters are in the circle go down below and it spells out something different. So that's something they could do together. And then individually, you might just hand these out to them. This is actually a double wide page. But it talks about the prophets. And it says, what is a prophet, right? In terms of the people in the Bible who we say were called by God to do something. It gives them a little more background about the female prophets. Who are the prophets in the Bible? What do prophets do? Are there prophets today? And there's a word bind that they can do on their own. But this is definite food for thought for them. Might be something that they find interesting to read at home. Don't try and do all this in one session if it means cutting them off from something they're enjoying, of course. But if they want to move from thing to thing, that's fine. It's a rich story and it's a rich topic. So I think there's a lot to do. I will have all of these options in the classroom, and if you don't get to all of them, just leave them, and that is no problem at all. I'll be around. I'll be teaching the youth, so let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.